Greetings, loved ones. Today we're going to talk about myths and facts about domestic violence. To help get these messages out, please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, hit the like button, and please share these messages with others. You never know, just by doing so, you might save a life. There's always confusion about domestic violence, and we desire to help clear this up today. Let's talk about the myths that are associated with domestic violence and learn what the actual truth is. The first myth that we have is that domestic violence happens only in low-income families. The fact, the truth, is that domestic violence happens in all kinds of families, rich and poor, urban, suburban, rural, in every part of the country, in every racial, religious, and age group. Second myth that we have here is that alcohol and drugs cause domestic violence. The truth is, alcohol and drugs do not cause domestic violence. Domestic violence is a choice. Violence is a choice. Many abusers, when they are under the influence of alcohol or drugs, they lose their inhibitions and their actions become more intense. The violence becomes more intense, and then they will use the drugs and the alcohol as an excuse for their actions. And then they'll blame the victim. Another myth is that domestic violence is an anger control issue. This is a really good one. The truth is, domestic violence has nothing to do with anger. Anger is a tool that abusers use to get what they want. We know abusers are actually very much in control because they can stop when someone knocks on the door or when the phone rings. And they often direct their punches and kicks to parts of the body where bruises are less likely to show. And they're not abusing everybody who makes them angry. They do their abuse when there are no witnesses, and they abuse the person whom they claim to love. Another myth is abusers and or victims have low self-esteem. The truth is, abusers do not have low self-esteem. They believe that they are entitled to have power and control over their partner. Abusers might pretend to have low self-esteem if it will make others believe the violence is not their fault. Another fact on this is that survivors of abuse may have had great self-esteem at the beginning of the relationship, but the abuser then uses the emotional abuse, calling her names, putting her down, telling her it is all her fault in order to destroy her self-esteem. And some abusers specifically look for women with low self-esteem as they believe she will be more likely to blame herself and less likely to report his behavior. And then other abusers will seek women with high esteem as they may represent a greater challenge to control over time. It's a game. Another myth is that domestic violence happens only once or twice in a relationship. Abusers usually escalate violent behaviors in frequency and intensity over time. It begins with psychological abuse, and it begins with sexual abuse, and it begins with economic abuse. When you see the first punch, that's not the first violence. That's an indicator that there has been plenty of violence before that, and it only gets worse. Another myth is that some women want to be beaten, and they ask for it. They deserve it. Some women go from abuser to abuser, so it must be something about them. The truth to this is no one deserves to be abused. Everyone has the right to live free from violence. No one would want to have their partner be abusive. Women who find that their second or third partners or abusers will often be blamed by others for the violence. They'll say, oh, it must be something about her. Or she will blame herself. I always seem to pick abusers. In reality, the abuser uses the tactic of charm early in the relationship to find out that she was previously abused. He uses this information to blame her for the violence. And he says things like, see, it must be something that you are doing wrong, or there would not have been two of us. Or they'll use it to silence her, saying, you're not going to tell anyone, because if you do, they'll never believe you because you said that before. Another myth is that children aren't aware of the violence in their home. The fact is that studies show that most children are aware of the violence directed at their mother. Myth: children are not at risk of being hurt or injured. The myth is that the only abuse is on the woman. The fact is, men who abuse their partners are more likely to abuse the children in the home, too. Domestic violence is the #1 predictor for child abuse. Subjecting children to an environment full of violent actions and hateful words is not being a good dad. And it's a trauma. When children are in the presence of violence, they are also victims of violence. Another myth is that boys who witness violence will grow up to be abusers. The fact is, studies have found that 30% of male child witnesses choose to become abusers as adults. This means that 70% do not become abusers, and many are committed to ending the cycle of violence in their lives. The majority of children, male and female, who witness domestic violence become advocates for children when they grow up. They're committed to raising their children without the use of violence and are going into professions where they work to end the violence against all children. Young men in our society must never feel they are destined to become violent. We send a dangerous message to young men and boys when we imply they are fated to become violent, and we give abusers an excuse for their behavior. Couple more facts. Domestic violence may lead to murder. 3/4 of all women who are murdered by their husbands, ex-husbands, or domestic partners. The violence escalates and escalates to the point of murder. And another fact is domestic violence costs the economy in job absenteeism, and in medical expenses. So now that we have cleared up most of the myths about domestic violence, you can use this information to help those who suffer from domestic violence. The question is not if you encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is, what will you do when you encounter them? This series is dedicated in honor of Gabby Pettito, a bright young woman whom the world has lost because of gender violence. You could be the person who saves a life. You're called, we are all called, to be champions for justice. Those who suffer violence need to know those who love them and those who don't even know them to step out and reach out to them, to give them the courage and a helping hand to leave before it is too late. If you are a victim of violence, know this: God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. If you are a victim of violence and or find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911 for help or reach out to someone. Please, please reach out to someone. To help get these messages out, to help others, please subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit the like button, and please share these messages with others. You never know. Just by doing so, you might save a life. If you, your organization, church, ministry, school, or business would like for us to provide training to your people, we can arrange it. Just email me at my address in the description. Tomorrow, we will talk about warning signs of abusers. Until then, God bless you.